Hi Pigeons, it's Geriatric. This is Jerry's Grinder. I'm just going to grind my cookie for a few minutes just to get something out there. Um, this is kind of a sensitive topic for a lot of people in the community, but I want to have this conversation because we have an interview coming up with Chief Brian Larkin from the Windsor Police Service, who's also the president of the Canadian Police Chiefs Association of Canada. So the Canadian Police Services have a long-standing history of discrimination against the 2S LGBT communities, which has carried into 2020, unfortunately. Are we about to see real change, Pigeons, finally? Or will we be back to another apology in 20 years? These are questions I'm asking. Chief Brian Larkin, president of the Canadian Association of Chiefs and Police, wrote the following. The purpose of our apology will be acknowledge our association's mistake, to apologize for its impact on the Canadian two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer 2S LGBTQ plus communities, and to commit to a meaningful reconciliation with these Canadians. You can see the written form and video and stuff on their website. There are still Canadians today that have a criminal record, Pigeon. It's hard to believe for homosexuality, although Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has promised to remove this. We have gone through the 2S LGBT government purge, which our Prime Minister Trudeau did apologize for a few years ago. We did reach out to the Prime Minister's office because we've asked about some comments around this, but we haven't heard anything back yet, Pigeon. Reading the apology and hearing it makes some of us feel that some progress has been made. We still must remind ourselves that this is a start, Pigeons. Usually you get an apology after something has occurred, which usually ends the issue. However, in this case, it seems to be the start of a long road ahead. It's also important to recognize the previous president before Brian Larkin refused to issue any apology, Pigeon. So clearly the pressure from communities is forcing change on a national, provincial, and municipal scale. We still recognize that some police services, political parties, organizations, and businesses are an old boys club. And you sometimes want to be in the middle of the old boys club, but not in this case. That yet to the transition to now. All one must do is look at case law and Human Rights Tribunal in Queen's Park to see it. Just recently, at Queen's Park, the Ford government passed Bill 213 by a vote of 52 to 35. And you can guess who voted against it. That would be the NDP, the Liberals, and the Greens. But unfortunately, the Conservatives have the majority, so they don't need to do much work. But however, this Bill 213 gives Charles McVetie's Canadian Christian College university status, despite the outcry from many 2S LGBTQ organizations, opposition MPPs, Muslim communities, post-secondary sector experts, community members due to the homophobic and transphobic behaviors of Charles McVetie. Although our very own in North Bay, MPP Vic Fideli did not vote, he did not speak out against homophobia and Charles McVetie. We have contacted the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, but have not received any response to this question or any other question we've asked. As you know, in a previous video, we actually called the Premier on his cell phone. Anyway, we wanted to know if he supported the apology and would he encourage all police services in Ontario to support the apology. However, he didn't get back to us, Pigeons. But the leader of the opposition in Queen's Park, Andrea Horvath of Ontario's NDP, had this to say on this. Love is love. It's encouraging to see the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police acknowledging the past discrimination, the pain caused, and the lives ruined by criminalization of queer, trans, and gender non-conforming people. I hope the apology is accompanied by actions to show a commitment to ending violence against the 2S LGBTQ folks. Also, the Minister of Public Safety, Bill Blair, added this because we asked him and he gave us a thought. We welcome the comments made by Chief Brian Larkin, President of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. His historic apology demonstrates values that are aligned with those of our government, and we look forward to continuing to work with them to ensure that no Canadian ever is harassed or discriminated against because of the base of who they are. I think they've got a little work to do there, Pigeon. Anyway, actions to support homophobia has gone on for centuries, mostly unnoticed. Passing Bill 213 by the Premier and his party is concerning as it makes the letter of the support the Premier sent to North Bay Pride in September inept. He did. He wrote out saying he was supporting the 2S LGBT community. You can check North Bay Pride's Facebook for that. If we say nothing or remain silent or show support for the individual who's discriminating against others, we are complicit in the act, pigeons. There is no doubt that the police across Canada are under enormous pressure to change how they work and ensure that all discrimination ends. There have been ongoing protests by Black Lives Matter, Idle No More, and we can step back to the bathhouse raids in Toronto and communities across Canada and around the world communities across Canada and around the world are speaking loudly for the change when it comes to policing. As Jocelyn Green, or Lady Raven as you know her, a member of North Bay community put it, we must untrain ourselves and others what many of us were taught since we were children. This is no small feat. I hope this is just not lip service. Yeah, I hope not too, because, unless you're getting good lip service, this isn't good lip service. We spoke to Chief Scott McLeod from the Nipissing First Nation. He made the following comment on this. I think Chief Larkin's apology serves as a positive first step in correcting systemic discrimination from the Canadian Police Services towards the 2S LGBT communities. We are in 2020, and this is about basic human rights, and that need to be afforded equally across the board to all citizens of this country. There remains much work to be done, but I think CACP is heading in the right direction. And also, just so you know, we reached out to one of the police chiefs that belongs to the association, Scott Todd from the North Bay Police Service, who's had the following to say. It reminds all police services that we must figure out ways to be more inclusive and understanding when it comes to all communities that we serve. In the North Bay Police Service, we are trying extremely hard to train our staff and officers that our community is important and deserve to be treated with respect and dignity no matter who you are. We are looking for ways to get more diversity in our department, that includes the 2S LGBT communities, people of color, and so forth, so that we have community representation. We can change, but the sad part, it takes time. But we are taking the step forward with this apology, which I'm definitely supporting. Isn't that nice? I'm so glad he did that. The national apology does raise some questions, Pigeon. With the 2S LGBT communities see this as an opportunity for change in the relationship with police services across Canada? If the community does not tell the police what they need to change and working in the 2SLG, how will the police know what the next step will be? The community needs to really think on next steps and offer them. How can they change if police services have no idea on next steps? The community is responsible for their next steps if they want the change they are after. They're not responsible to get the apology. That was their responsibility, but we need to teach the police service what they need to do to move forward in a way that is beneficial for our community. How could be sitting there saying to yourself, more LGBTQI++ stuff, more police issues? How does this affect me? Is it still pride? A former executive director, Olivia Newhouse, said during an interview with Straight Talk, what is good for the queer community is good for everybody. Remember that interview, Pigeons? We have protests, we have marches, some folks write letters, some of us do nothing but sit and watch or criticize others for wanting change that will benefit everyone instead of the few. But at the end of the day, Pigeon, when we feel like we are not making any difference, you get the first step to healing a community by a simple apology. You may say to yourself, it's not my fault, so why are we apologizing for past events? It really is quite simple. We acknowledge the past to correct the future and sustain the now. Yeah, I wrote that, Pigeon. When people around the world are murdered due to their sexuality, you need change. When someone loses their job because of their sexuality, you need change. Change is not a bad thing. The world needs change. It needs healing. The world needs a step back to step forward to ensure we do not make the same mistakes again, Pigeons. We all need to do our part on healing change, because change is good for everyone, especially when it comes to equality. We reviewed the toolkit made for the police services by the association. The one thing that stands out the most, it seems to be there's no community input. every contributor in the toolkit was from the police service. So it does raise the question, how do you train others about a community without involving the actual community? It seems to be the area where many services seem to struggle, Pigeon. So we did. We called out to Brian Larkin, and he did an interview, which will be airing over the next couple of weeks. So make sure you tune in to Straight Talk. Check it out. It's a great interview, Pigeon. It's actually quite eye-opening. And then we can move forward. So this has been another episode of Jerry's Grinder, and I hope to hear from you soon, Pigeon. Take care. Bye-bye.